Yeah, might as well.
And I threw this thing on TikTok just because, whatever. Here, in fact, will you let me share that screen?
You should be able to.
God bless. You have it set up already. I didn't even check before I asked. That's how much, man. You're just on top of your shit, and I appreciate you. Okay.
No, I'm actually not.
So whenever you come down here, look at this butthole-looking thing. That's a
wow.
That's something you're supposed to.
Tremendous. That's where that queef is coming from.
Oh, and look,
that's definitely a bunt cake, dude. Come
that
on.
is a bunt cake.
Okay,
Delicious
community
looking
violations.
bunt cake.
And
they
then
do look suspiciously like buttholes, though.
They do. That's how you know they're good.
Oh, where's that fucking thing? It may be the community violations one. They may have finally fucking tagged it. It may have been this little guy right here. But I had a little, and it was part of it was something you posted, I want to say. It was a park bench. No, they wouldn't have pulled it. It had too much engagement. Hang on. It's a bunch of fucking nonsense, and I'll tag you in that shit. And I think it was from you. Yeah, this one right here. Look at that. 185, 163, 146. Who gives a fuck?
4.9 million.
Dude,
what is the
comment section is hilarious. So this is it right here.
This is not pro-disabled. This is anti-homeless architecture designed as disabled accommodation. Do not be fooled. Fucking hilarious. Not to be that guy, but wheelchair users are not starved for places to sit down. Incredible.
I'm almost positive that was either you or Darren, and so I reposted it. And then, I mean, obviously, this was not too long ago. And then 622.
And so 4.9 million. Holy shit.
Dude. That's so weird. So you can never gauge. I think we've talked about this before, but you can never gauge which posts are going to go crazy. I think the highest one we have on Instagram is a little girl like with a guitar singing "I Wonder What's Inside Your Butthole." And
I love that.
That thing hit almost 20 million views, and it was not even my original post. I just shared it.
Yeah, Twitter's very much the same way, where it's like I'll concoct this thoughtful post and that'll go, it'll fall on deaf ears, and then I'll just post something stupid. I tried it the other day. I said I posted something about Hitler and his tendency to have all this esoteric kind of, well, it was a lot of pagan worship, a lot of Zeus veneration surrounding the regime, and I posted a bunch of thoughtful things. Nobody said shit, and then I posted something and I just said, "It's the Jews," and it just took off. And I was like, well, that's cool. All right. I guess I understand the formula here.
This is one I shot. This is one I'm actually proud of. This I did last year, a couple years ago when I was at my construction job, and I, wrote how to cut a straight line with a Sawzall, perfect every time, which anybody's going to click on. This is proprietary, by the way. That's not, the tool is called a reciprocating saw. So that already got some buzz. If you put something misinformation on purpose in the thing, people will just comment to correct you. And so this thing took off. I had a bunch of people. This is 18 million something views right now.
Incredible.
That's insane.
I've been learning that. Some of the accounts that I follow, they just say things that are meant to trigger you, and so you go and you argue about the minutia, and it's like, that's the point, sucker. Gotcha.
Yeah, we figured out the algorithm on social media and the internet in general is if it pisses somebody off, you're going to get a ton of hits on it, and the more engagement as far as comments and all that shit, the more views that come from it, because people send it to each other and then they fight about it, and so we've hacked the algorithm matrix on that.
Well, that is precisely why I am a racist on Twitter. It seems to work really well. Yeah. It's very fun. It's cathartic, and also it seems to generate quite a bit of interaction. So it's a lot of
all you got to do is say something like that, and you'll be famous.
That's it.
All right.
Man.
Well, so we are live now on YouTube, so I guess we can get this shit going. Welcome back to Legit Bat. I'm Joe. Jen and Ben are both not here today, and that's fine because I have my what do you want to call it? On-call host, Brandon from ExpandingRealityPodcast.com.
Solid.
Why are you gay?
No. I haven't met your wife yet. Oh, well, no, I guess technically I have met her. I definitely know you're not gay. You're gay-ish, but that's fine.
Everybody's a little gay, okay? But
about
I'm not
6%.
Like full on. If we're going percentages, I'm way more into my wife. Yeah, she's so hot. Just that'll keep me into females. Just her alone, which is all I need, right? That's it.
As long as you're over the 49% or 51% threshold of straight, then I think you're fine.
That's situational as well. But please continue.
Yes. Well, tonight, I always get discombobulated when I don't have my co-hosts here, but I don't think we have anything off the top besides, Oh, that was what I was going to bring up. I guess it's been a couple months now, but we found out that our show is on IMDb, and I'm not sure how that happens. I think it's just a data aggregate that like gets automatically put into shit. I don't know, but we're on IMDb, and we have 5 reviews on IMDb. And thanks to Tim from Australia for being our first review on IMDb. Simon from the UK tried to put one up there, but I think he went a little too far because I think it got rejected because it's not there anymore. But if you're on IMDb, which basically I only use that to look up their rating on movies, and they're usually pretty accurate. If it's a 7 and above, probably going to be a decent show. So right now, Legit Bad is sitting at a 10 on IMDb. Let's keep it that way. Don't tell anybody about the show because then it'll get to the wrong people and they'll give us a 1. So let's keep it at a 10. Send it to people you know who will, highly rate it. Anyway, for the audio listeners, we are actually live on YouTube right now. As far as I can tell, there's people in the chat and I can see our little faces over there. So I think we are. And they're talking. Yes, I see Jesus, Chance. Who else is in there? Corey said he was going to be here. I don't see you all yet. But yeah, get in the chat. And we're going to try to do this more often because it's kind of fun to go live. And now that I've figured out YouTube, that's great.
Boner.
Anyway, our guest tonight is the Raven from Nephilim Death Squad. You can find them anywhere you get podcasts as well as on YouTube. And of course, the links will be in the show notes. And Top Lobster, his co-host, could not be here. And so we'll have to catch up with you guys again soon so that we can all hang out together. And maybe at that time, the other 2/3 of Legit Bat will be here as well. But till then, we'll just go with what we're doing. So what do you want to talk about tonight, dude? It's a live stream free for all. What do you want to do? Let's start off with this. Where does your name come from? I'm sure you've been asked that a bunch, but where does your name come from? I'm assuming it has something to do with the giants of the Bible, but you could correct me.
Well, are you talking about my name as in the moniker of the Raven, or are you talking about the name of the show?
Name of the show first.
Name of the show first.
Next.
So the name of the show, Nephilim Death Squad. Yeah, my co-host has explosive diarrhea. He's not going to be here with us today. Hopefully he survives the bout.
Is that actually what's happening?
No, he has a sort of a mother-in-law situation that came up. They showed up on a net. It's essentially the same thing. Yeah. And so, unfortunately, got stuck with the much gayer half of Nephilim Death Squad. But the way the name came about was, well, one, it's a banger. You guys haven't complimented us on the name yet, but everybody does compliment us on the name. It's very aggressive. It's very masculine. And it lends a lot of wonder to it. It is a good. Thank you very much. I appreciate it. I was waiting for it. Everybody usually starts that way. But really, it's because we tend to look at the many conspiracies that unfold in the world through a bit of a biblical lens. And we suspect that most of the dark arts that are in the backdrop of everything, it's like every conspiracy leads to some sort of satanic ritual or some sort of, Illuminati symbolism, things of that nature. And we have come to the conclusion that the spirits that these things are alluding to are actually the disembodied spirits of the Nephilim being the offspring of fallen angels and human women. And when they did die, their spirits they didn't ascend anywhere. They're just trapped in a different realm, and they're kind of pulling the strings on things like maybe Al Capone, how he did from prison. And they also have syphilis.
Oh, of course. And they're gay and probably fake too.
100% gay.
Yeah. I mean, besides mating with women, they just did that to, make sure that they had big gay babies.
Yeah, so, all their babies were definitively gay. And I can't really blame them. I mean, if you're a giant that's the offspring of some sort of supernatural entity and you see women in their fantastic tits, it's a normal course. I don't blame them. I don't begrudge them.
Woohoo titties.
We asked Gary Wayne this. He was unable to come up with an answer, so perhaps you, with your expertise, can from a Death Squad perspective. And I do appreciate the shit out of your name, sir.
Thank you.
What kind of vaginas were these women, daughters of men, sporting to be able to take in the cock of a Nephilim? Now, also side question, do you feel that it wasn't necessarily the insemination part of it, that they were like jacking off and the chick just sat on it at the last second? Like, how did this happen with these physical qualities that we find inherent in the physical reality we find ourselves in?
So, I mean, initially when these human women, they were mating with fallen angels. They took a physical form, something I think much more manageable. And then there is that question still, because the Nephilim bloodline kind of gets watered down the more human DNA that gets introduced to it. You have like the Nephilim and the Raphaim, and it goes down and down, and they kind of get smaller. If you talk to Dustin Nemos, who is a pretty consistent guest on Nephilim Death Squad, he thinks that the Nephilim are actually the predecessors to the Jews. So that's how much he thinks that the line's been watered down. Really jarring episode with him when he broke that news to us. But it kind of goes a bunch of different ways. You know, everybody grasps at that theory and tries to understand it. And it's really like there's a school of thought that think that these women were torn asunder when they gave birth to these giants. There's also a school of thought that thinks, you know, when they gave birth to them, they were of a manageable size and they quickly grew. There's also the school of thought that these original women that mated with these fallen angels essentially became like what would be the mother of dragons, right? The mother of monsters, Lilith and a couple of other characters. And they were transformed in this process of you know, having intercourse with these fallen angels and then giving birth to these Nephilim. And they were transformed into something that the way they describe it sounds very much like a harpy that you would have in kind of like Greek mythology, right? Like a sort of a bird with tits and bird feet, but a woman face, very confusing sexually. It's like very terrifying, but also alluring. So I would imagine that, you know, there's all kinds of different theories, but transmutation seems to be one of them. It's like, it doesn't just keep you in your human form when you have physical intercourse with an angel. Something else happens to you. So maybe that's how they did it. But still, there is that mystery, right? It's like, well, what happened when they're giant offspring that people debate? It's like, were they 20 feet tall, or were they like, you know, sometimes people think that they're 40, depending on the theologian that you speak to, you'll get all kinds of different things. And so I think it was probably a disaster when they got horny. I don't know what happened to those women. I imagine a lot of them didn't survive. But something had to have gone right at some point in order for them to propagate their genetic line.
Yeah, and there's so many theories surrounding it. Like you said, Gary Wayne is one of the big ones with Genesis 6 conspiracy. We've had him on a couple times. Brandon was actually there for the second time. That's a different story entirely, but if people remember that one, yes, it was very fun.
Wait, did you say Random was there?
Brandon.
Oh, I thought you said Random. I thought you were talking about a different character. I was like, how in the hell do we know the same guy? No, please continue. Go on.
I do know a lot of randoms, though, so we might.
This guy said his name.
But yeah, so what's with the Death Squad part of your name, though? Are you trying to kill the Nephilim?
Ideally, that would be the case. We do a lot of conversation on the topic of their inevitable return. We suspect that there will come a time when you're going to see grotesque entities of, you know, biblical nature roam the lands once again. And if that happens, then, you know, you have a lot of issues on your hand. It's like, is decapitation going to work? Do you need copper edged blades? Will copper jacketed rounds work? There's a lot of questions that we have. But
silver
mostly
bullets and wooden stakes.
Silver bullets, wooden stakes. Have you looked up? I looked up a silver bullet, by the way, recently. Not cheap. I think I'd rather die.
No,
honestly.
I mean, I don't know how much a bullet weighs depending on the caliber, I guess, but just an ounce of silver is what, 35 bucks?
Yeah, and if you miss
22 rounds.
I mean, maybe, but I think I saw like a 5.56. But either way, it's like, it's not an expensive or an inexpensive round. So it's going to be a real problem. But really, at the end of the day, it's just Death Squad hits hard. Doesn't it hit hard? Isn't it like,
it's a banger.
Yeah,
for sure.
As a dude who looks very unmasculine, I think it helps me feel better about my visage.
I would like to second the, you know, praising of your name. It is a very good name. I love it. Probably the best name I've ever heard.
All right, settle down. What do you think about this demon face syndrome? Do you think that's what this is, this resting demon face shit that they're talking about how we're going to just see people turn into demons, but really it's your issue? It's a psychological syndrome that you're suffering from. It sounds like a cover story for what you're talking about, these run-amucks just running amok.
Well, I mean, despite the name of the show and the way that I look and the things that I say, I do try to be balanced in my approach to this kind of shit. So, like, I don't know. When I see the article, I know it's very triggering. I know a lot of people start to jump to the same conclusions, but I've just yet to see it. There's like one dude on the internet who puts a video out that's like, I am seeing people's faces morph in real time and distort into some sort of like, you know, monstrosity, some sort of demon. And But that's the only case that I found. I've just found the one case that kind of went viral alongside with this video and the article. That video came out a couple of months after the article did. Since then, I've not seen anything. So I'm not ready to say that that's what that is, but I would imagine if we did have a time come to pass where suddenly there was all this, TikTok was loaded with people saying, I went to Dunkin' Donuts and the little Filipino lady that handed me my culotta, her face morphed into a demon and I freaked out, but she remained calm. She clearly didn't know she looked like a demon. I would say then, yes, but still, it's a ridiculous notion almost to imagine that they would be trying to prepare us for that, as if that article would soften the blow. Like, who in their right mind is going to see that happen and go, that fucking article I saw that one time, I'm having demonic face syndrome. I don't see it happening. And like I said, I don't see a lot of people, but if we did, I wouldn't know what that is. Some people would say, oh, maybe it's a revelation of the method sort of thing. I think we beat that expression to death in the conspiracy community, and it's kind of a catch-all term for any time they want to show us something behind the curtain. So even that, I'm not too sure. I don't know what the hell the point of putting that article was, or putting it out was, but it was a lot of fun. When I saw that, I was like, that's, it's a sexy
I would
article.
say one of the reasons would be what my wife, Jen, who's usually here, and you'll have to meet her next time, is always saying that a lot of these articles are written by AI, and that was actually proven out recently, I believe. So I don't know if it's one of those things where they're just putting out every crazy shit you can imagine just so it's on file so they can refer back to it if they need to. It's almost like an insurance policy or something, where there's so much retarded shit that they put in there, and they just so they can cover their ass, just in case it happens. So they can be like, no, see, we had an article about that, 6 months ago where people are seeing demon faces. Or revelation of the method, real quick, before you get into what you're going to say. Revelation of the method is beat to death the same way PSYOP is, or controlled opposition, or anything else. It seems to be one of those reflexive words people use when they don't know what it is. So they're like, oh, it's controlled that's a PSYOP. It's fake. It does seem kind of like that. But I think some of it is that. But anyway, I cut you off. Go ahead.
There's definitely still room for that sort of a thing, right? I mean, just because we beat it to death doesn't mean it does have some relevancy. But when it comes to what you just said, I think that's actually a great idea, because even if it's not an insurance policy to go, hey, look, we did mention it, this is all that it is. What it could just be is a symptom of what we've seen in the media over the past few years starting to evolve through AI. And what I mean by that is, over the past few years, we've seen this rush to be the first one to report. And when you rush to be the first one to report, that's where you get the misinformation, disinformation shit. There's so many different news sources, with the explosion of social media, everyone has kind of become like this little reporter themselves. And a lot of the times, the first one to go viral is the first one to get to the story. And what if you go, well, yeah, let's just, instead of getting there first, what if you got there before? What if you used AI to just saturate the market to such a degree that, like, yeah, we already said it, we already covered it, no matter what happens. And you're not taking any man hours, you're not dumping any time or resources into doing it, you're just letting the AI do it. So, I mean, in a way, there might be some validity to that. I would see that. Look, if you're listening and you're in that industry and you haven't considered that, you should probably consider it, because what's the evolution of being first to report? It's being the person who reports it before it happens.
Yeah, and like you said, people are in such a rush to be the first one to report or find something out. I would say mostly just for the clicks. And if you're making money off of that, I get it. It's like a reporter who gets a raise because they broke a story or something. I understand that. That's fine. But if you're not and you're just doing it for clicks, it just seems kind of strange to immediately put something out there without kind of vetting it first. We tend to let shit marinate. We didn't touch the Trump assassination thing for probably 2 weeks after it happened, because I'm like, I'm not jumping to any conclusions on this. There's a lot of theories out there. And then that's actually when I heard you guys on Tripoli's show, and you were talking about how basically it could just all be fucking fake. It could have just been a ruse. And that's the knee-jerk psyop thing. But it actually kind of makes sense in this instance of the Trump assassination. So, Brandon, I know you're not into politics, so we can just kind of roll past this one if you want.
I have things to say about this if you would like for me to say them, sir.
Expound, sir.
Okay, so David, did you guys cover sort of the MAGA element to the whole thing about that being the highest satanic order?
Oh yeah, well, MAGA means like magician, right? In Latin, there's this like really interesting thing surrounding him, especially the verbiage that's attached to him. Even when they changed, um, for the RNC, or wasn't the RNC? It was where Hulk Hogan ripped his shirt off and gave us the idiocracy look, right? The whole thing after the assassination attempt. They rolled on a banner. It wasn't just MAGA anymore. It was Make America Great Once Again. So you had a new acronym, and I had to pop it in to translate, Google Translate, and see what I could find. And it was like Portuguese for like deception and sadness or something like that. And I was like, oh, well, that's interesting. But there is a lot of really interesting verbiage surrounding that guy for sure.
That's wild, as well as the cutting of the right ear being a symbolism of an initiation into the highest priesthood, right?
Right. And you also have Maria Abramovich, which we talked about briefly on Tinfoil Hat. We didn't get to expand on it very much, but she is like this. I'm sure you guys are familiar with her. She's the ambassador to education for Ukraine, which is wild because before that, she was mostly just a Satanist, an overt Satanist who was popular for her really grotesque artwork that she would, call art. But it's amazing the things that you could do and just call art.
Quote unquote artwork.
Yeah.
Anything is modern art, dude. I think we've talked about this before, but a pedestal with nothing on it with an invisible statue is now art. So you can dismember a body and call it art and drink its blood and everything. It's just art.
Exactly.
Just cool.
She has this little effigy she puts in a corner. It's the size of like a child. She's pouring pig's blood on it. She's writing all this crazy shit in blood on the wall. And then, of course, she's seen with all these really popular characters like Lady Gaga and Jay-Z and yada, yada. And she's doing spirit cooking events, which she popularized probably around 2018, 2019. This is her sort of cultural footprint before she's then the ambassador to education of Ukraine, which is fascinating. But she spoke with a bunch of shamans who had just finished doing some deep dive meditation group dream sort of situation.
Both.
Maybe both. I'm sure, right? Because there's always sort of an ayahuasca element. And so they came out of it saying something to the effect of Donald Trump is the magician that will awaken the world, which I find fascinating for a couple of reasons. One is, what the fuck? The other one is MAGA meaning magician. And the third one is that a magician is not the same. When we hear that, we're like, oh, Donald Trump is a sorcerer. I'm not going to lie. That was kind of my thing. I'm like, oh, there's a magical element. But if you take magician at its face, this is not a person who actually performs magic. This is a person who deceives you, who tricks you into, creating illusions, thinking something is happening. Watch this hand while the other hand does something else. So I find that to be a really fascinating element of this whole thing. The whole thing with Trump is really kind of steeped in mystique. His name, Donald, for example, means like world ruler. His father's middle name was Christ. His mother's first name was Mary, and his grandmother's last name was Christ. And there's just so much surrounding that guy that I tend to be one of these people. You said that, Brandon's not into politics that much. And I'm a firm believer that at the highest levels, politics is purely theater. And I think that when you're dealing with the president, that is the highest level of theater that we get to, be exposed to in America.
Thank you for being conscientious about that too, Joe. That's very sweet of you. But I do like to dip my toe in the water with you, bro.
Oh, well, I mean, we do too. We try to sprinkle it in here and there, especially on a crazy year like an election year when it's
selection year.
I don't know if we've heard it yet. Is this the most important election of our lives this year?
All of them, Joe. All of them.
I'm pretty sure. Yeah.
Every single one.
That's the most important one.
Right. I'm pretty sure this is the most important one, though. Just a little bit more important than the last couple,
Well, but now you're getting the parroting back of if he wins, I'm leaving the country. And no, you're not, and then, but if they, throw the vote and it's so obvious this time, but it was that last time, guys. I mean, just give it up, right? It shit or get off the pot, man. Nephilim, get your asses back down here.
That's it.
Show us how you did that thing with the vaginas of the daughters of men, and let's just end this nonsense.
Can we put that mystery to bed? I want to know how you did the thing with the vaginas.
Yeah.
Can I just watch it one time? Not for not for horny stuff. I just want to watch it just for science. Just for science.
Yeah.
Yes, science.
We're gonna do science about it.
Yeah. So we did have and I totally agree with what you said, which is why we don't cover politics really in depth unless we have somebody on like Brad Binkley last week, who that's his jam, that's what he does. So I actually, every time we do a show on politics, that's kind of my education on what's going on in politics at the time. But I agree with you that at the highest levels, it is 100% theater. And Matthew Lane, shout out in the chat, said that where is it? Oh, actors weren't allowed in politics in the past for this very reason. Exactly. Tell what? Ronald Reagan, was he the first actor that became a president? And I think maybe not all of them were actually actors, but they are fucking actors, if you know what I mean.
Wink, 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 wink.
Yeah. It brings about that idea too. You know, you're talking about this is the most important election of our lives. There's that sentiment that's floating around that like this is the last election, right? You've seen that. I think Roseanne Barr was talking about that. And one of the most fascinating things, I think, like one of the components of this Trump story that just, you know, it just blows your dick into the dirt when you start to look into this idea of the Ingersoll Lockwood books. Are you guys familiar with those?
I am not.
Oh, dude, this is going to be so fun.
Break this off, yes.
So Ingersoll Lockwood was a author from like the late 1800s. I believe he died in the early 1900s. And he wrote 2 books. One of them was and I'm going to get some of these details wrong because I do every single time. And my co-host is always there to correct me, but I'm always pretty damn close. It's the Marvelous Adventures of Little Baron Trump, in which a young
that's
boy,
what you're talking about.
Yes,
and the last president,
and the last president. Yeah,
okay.
And one of the craziest details about the Marvelous Adventures of Little Baron Trump is not only that it follows the adventures of a little boy of decadence who ends up time traveling, named Baron, but also the guy who is narrating it is the Don, also known as the Master of the Universe, which is interesting because Donald means like King of the World. And
like Mafia Don.
Right. And I don't know if it's in The Last President or if it's in the Marvelous Adventures, but Little Baron Trump ends up having a building that is the exact same address as Trump Towers on Fifth Avenue in New York City, which is what do you even do with that? It's a coincidence,
dude.
It's just a coinkydink. That's it.
Stop connecting dots that aren't there. It's a coincidence.
That's one of my favorite things about
Go watch football.
Please, more bread and circus.
Yeah, I know. So we haven't covered those books like in particular, just because I feel like there's enough shows out there that go into depth on that, and I've never read the books. I just know the general storyline. But that's so funny that you brought that up because I was gonna talk about that next. But the time traveling aspect, do you even think that that's something that, and we actually have mentioned this, that I think that if time travel had been invented at any point in history, it's already over. If it was invented 1,000 years from now, it doesn't matter because then you're already going back in time trying to change things or whatever. So is that something in your mind that's even possible? I know not with physics as we know them, but like, do you think that's happening as we speak?
Well, when you talk about physics, I'm retarded. So I go like, sure, absolutely, could be. But when it comes to Trump and the whole time travel thing, it was his uncle. He had like an uncle named John Trump that was an MIT employee or something to that effect. And he was tasked with gathering Nikola Tesla's paperworks, clearing out his lab. And the FBI actually made him report to them on, whether or not there was any substantial findings. And Nikola Tesla is one of those dudes. It's like when you think about time travel technology, he's synonymous with the idea. And so I think it starts to paint this really interesting picture when it comes to, you look at the books and this idea of time travel. You look at his uncle having recovered his works from Nikola Tesla. It's almost like if you can't see that plot device, then there's something wrong with you. But I do also look at that plot device like, damn, that is glaringly obvious. Like, sometimes it just feels like we live in a movie. It's like when Elon Musk says the most entertaining outcome is the most likely outcome. I look at this and I draw people's attention to it because I'm like, guys, this is compelling. It's interesting. What are the odds? This is literally the foundation for a fantastic film. But then I also go, that seems too convenient. So I'm mostly in that camp. If you had to put a bullet to my head or a gun to my head and say, is time travel involved with this? I'd say yes. But that's the only way that you would get a definitive conviction out of me, because I have my hesitations. It just seems too cinematic, doesn't it? It just seems too, I just don't think life typically plays out like a Hollywood film. And when you look at Trump, it's like everything about him is a Hollywood film. Right now, we're in the throes of his, magnificent comeback story. And this is coming from a guy who wrote The Art of the Comeback. It's also on the nose that sometimes I go, like I said, I'm retarded, right? So why can I see this? I shouldn't be able to see this. It shouldn't be so obvious. It feels like a Hollywood movie, and that gives me a lot of pause. But like I said, gun to my head, if you force me to make a decision, I would say, yeah, there seems to be some element of time travel involved in this.
Yeah, and the timing of it is interesting too, because weren't there's books written in the late 1800s or early 1900s, somewhere around there? So the fact that it was that long ago, and if you look at the way technology has ramped up in just the last 120 years, it's insane. If you were to look at a graph of technology, it's a pretty straight line for a long time, kind of goes up, and then all of a sudden 1900 hits and it just shoots upwards, and we're going to the moon by 1969. So if there was time travel and they started, affecting shit around the turn of the century, I mean, that, like you said, I'm also retarded, so you're in good company. But Brandon, you're about to say something. What are your thoughts on this?
I want to know why you're doubting your intuition here, because maybe that's exactly what the fuck's going on, and that you've got a glaring obvious, because, it's sort of like calling somebody a conspiracy theorist back when the CIA allegedly started that as a means to not question, right? If people say, well, that scenario sounds like a movie and therefore it's immediately written off, then that's easy, right? But what if it's so like that the reason that it exists as gaslighting in the first place, as not useful or irrelevant, just makes it, more ridiculous whenever it plays out that way in the world, because things are being played out that way, I think. And as well as back to the technology stuff, I mean, who knows what the fuck time and any of it really is? Maybe time travel or anything has always been part of this realm, and it's got nothing to do with where we all are intellectually. Maybe this place is reset every now and again, sort of like Jason Bashir's idea with this Phoenix cycle and sort of this 130 whatever years, man. And it just resets, and some of the shit's just left over from a mud flood or something like this, with what we find with the buried technology and, all the bells and things like this. So what do you think of that, dude? Do you think that this place has been reset and that it sort of goes through one of these things, and that that's really what's responsible for sort of the craziness? Because it's, the saying goes is that, there's nothing new under the sun. And when we see sort of videos from the World's Fairs, we're seeing, electric trolleys being used, and we're seeing a lot of questionable technology that they say that they didn't have access to back then, but we're finding that ridiculous, and the times they built buildings and all that kind of stuff. So it just seems like maybe that there is something afoot here, but I think also our idea of linear time is a big presupposition sort of built into the realm, that maybe it's not like that at all. Maybe it is just like scripted. And when I had Micah Dank on, we talked about Revelation and things being just them, whoever the they is, knowing how the script's going to play out, because it's just like this, exactly to what you said. It's just a movie, and we're sort of inserted in here without a memory of it. I don't know why. It's just interesting when you sort of look at it through that lens. So I know there was a lot in there. What do you think about that?
Well, I just want to shout out to Micah. I love Micah. He was actually our first guest, technically, on Nephilim Death Squad before we coined the name and decided to make it an official thing. But to the point of the elites kind of moving the way that they do, because they know that it's a script, Revelation playing out the way that it does. So I kind of get caught up in this whole thing where I can see that there is a manufacturing of prophecy. It seems pretty clear to me that there is a sort of a status quo that's pulling the strings. And a lot of people go, well, it's the Jews. And whenever you say that there's a status quo, they get upset with you for not naming the Jews. And there's certainly a Jewish element. But I think that the buck doesn't stop there. If you think that that's the end of this, then, you got another thing
Not
coming.
to cut you off, but I would love to interject on that too. And I totally agree. And it's the same thing to me with any secret society, Freemasons, OTO, all those things. People like to find one thing to blame and be like, it's all that. I don't think so. I think it's all different factions. Maybe they're working together or not, but I think the Zionist aspect of that, as you said, I'm pretty sure that's what I heard. That is definitely, yeah, definitely one of them. And anyway, sorry, continue.
No, but I do think that's valid. It's like it's a little bit of everything, right? You're not going to get. It's not like you go to the Freemasons and you go like, obviously, right? That's become the most obvious thing over the years. Is we used to go, it's the Freemasons, and then you meet a couple of dudes that go to lodges, and they're like, literally, they just like, this guy's a plumber, I'm a carpenter. We're kind of like, skill pooling here, and we have beers sometimes, and we dress up in these funny uniforms and do these things, and they don't really know anything at all. But at the highest echelons of all these organizations. Is where you kind of get the cream of the crop when it comes to the movers and shakers on the world stage. And I would assume that within the Zionists, you would have the same thing. Just elements of dudes just moving along through their everyday lives, and then dudes that are actually, they have their hand on the on the levers. And so, but I do recognize that there seems to be some element of a manufacturing of prophecy by all these various groups. And I often wonder if that is to trick us into thinking that we're in some sort of end times prophecy, or if mankind gets to the position, because you're talking about, all these various technological advances that seem to be hidden from us. And it's like, well, maybe there are times throughout history, or maybe we are at the sort of the apex of that point in human history where we can now actually execute prophecy. Like, what is prophecy? On the lowest levels, it's, well, there's war, there's famines, there's pestilence, and there's cataclysms, natural disasters. And well, it seems that for the first time in history, at least known history, surely there may have been another time, people that do digs on Atlantis and things like that. We're talking about Tartaria and the Bells and all these sort of buried cities and mud floods, but it seems to me like Tartaria was likely a real place, and it was very technologically advanced. With that being said, the first time in known history, we can cause these, right? It was in the early 2000s. It was 2006. I was 16 years old, and I was looking into all these conspiracies, and HARP was already an established, known functions and an established, known technology that they had access to. It was a conspiracy at that time. But later on, you find out like, oh, no, they are cloud seeding and manufacturing weather, but that's only to make it rain in Dubai. But we do have, if they're making it rain in Dubai, they can certainly do a lot more than that. So I would say we're at the point where they can manufacture cataclysm. Well, what about war? Well, certainly war has always been man-made. And so
that's an easy one.
Well, what about pestilence? Well, I mean, we're just coming off the back of some genetic modification that ended up in pestilence shutting down the world. And I think what we got out of that was mild. I think we could see a much more. I don't know that will come to pass. We're in the middle.
Well,
of like,
what's one of the other horses? Famine. I mean, Kamala with her price fixing or whatever the fuck they call it, and that inevitably leads to a famine situation, and not because of lack of food, but lack of availability, or the just-in-time transport and all that stuff. So how many horses are we at right now? Like
that's all four of them.
Yeah, we're at all four now, so we're just waiting. So to bring it back to what I think Brandon was saying while I was taking a pee-pee back there, were you talking about kind of the cyclic nature of Revelation and other books like that? So Chance and a prolific memer in our Telegram, shout out Chance is a ghost. He wanted to ask, and I was going to kind of get to some of these questions near the end, but it was right in line with what we were talking about. So he said, reset on top of reset, when's the next one? So Chance, are we talking in terms of like time or what that'll look like? I guess that's what he's kind of asking you. What do you think about that?
I don't know. We get caught up in this like great reset, great awakening, great deception kind of thing. As far as a reset and the extent of it. I don't think, obviously, they can't reset time, or not obviously. I can't say that. That's very stupid. But they can obscure history in such a way that you would consider it a reset. They could wipe out our history as we know it. You certainly have this idea of, what was it, around the 20s, the 1920s, you suddenly had these trains filled with orphans showing up. There was like countless orphans, and this is around the same time that there was suspected to be a mud flood. I mean, it seems like, and I don't know if that was manufactured. I don't know if they had the technology. I mean, we're looking at it now, and as Brandon said, there's nothing new under the sun. So could there at one time have been some other technology that they had access to that they could cause these mud floods? So I think like they can do a really good job of obscuring the past, hiding your history, destroying the architecture and your artifacts and all these things. We're seeing it right now, right? You're seeing in the Middle East, they're just destroying countless statues and temples and everything. And if they continue that, all that's going to be lost. So I don't know if it happens again, but I am caught up right now. My concern is this idea of this great deception and this great awakening. A lot of people are saying we're at a great awakening. And I know this is a little bit off topic from what he's saying, but it's just hard to speculate. Is another one coming? I mean, I know you have the WEF and this idea of, the Great Reset. But I'm afraid that we are kind of in this great awakening. And the reason I say that I'm afraid of that, it would sound like it's a good thing, right? I don't know how long you guys have been conspiracy theorists, for lack of a better term, but it's been, for me, 18 years now. And when I was a kid and I was, waking up, it's a very gay expression.
You are gay.
Why are you gay? Because I woke up. So when you wake up, you kind of have this feverish energy about you, right? You're trying to tell everyone, well, look, they're gonna declare martial law, and they're gonna turn the Walmarts into FEMA camps. And you're trying to sound the alarms about all these different things. And in 2006, 2007, I was doing that. None of this stuff came to pass. And then I would fall for whatever the next thing was. At 17, 18 years old, I'd fall for this, and I'd ring the alarms about that. And it wasn't an immediate threat. Nothing would come to pass. And this would happen over and over again until I ended up being wrong about so much that I just kind of calmed the fuck down. And when I did that, I was able to take in more, analyze more, not have it destroy my worldview, also get back to being a normal human being. What I'm worried about is what happens when everybody wakes up at once. Now, when I was wrong many times, I don't think that's indicative of being a young man. I kind of suspect it's indicative of waking up to the idea that the mainstream narrative is bullshit. When you find out you've been lied to, you then start to grab onto a bunch of other shit that you suspect is the truth, and then that ends up falling apart. What happens when everybody does that? And I'm worried that it's like having a guy wake up out of his sleep because alarms are going off. And I think in many ways, I know I already tricked the Zionism, alarm. So I guess we'll say the pandemic, that woke up a lot of people.
Oh, I'm sorry. Did you think I meant you couldn't say Jew? No, we can totally say Jew.
Oh, okay. I didn't know if you were, because you're on YouTube.
You can say kike if you want. I don't care.
On YouTube? I don't think you could say kike on YouTube, but I just did. So
I just did.
It's awesome. High five. Boom.
Boom.
So what I'm worried about is a bunch of people waking up during COVID and going through the same thing that I did, which is trying to grab onto all these different things that they think are the truth, only to be wrong. Except the difference is, where I had nobody to my left and right to reaffirm the shit that I was going through, these folks do. A lot of people woke up during COVID, moved to the conspiracy side of the realm, and now are just like high-fiving and screaming in each other's faces. And I'm watching a lot of them be wrong a lot. And I'm not the arbiter of truth. I don't fucking know definitively what the truth is, but I'm watching a lot of them fall for the same shit that I did. And it's not necessarily the same topic, but it's the same like psychology that I went through. And I think that's actually dangerous. So it's like, if you just woke up and everything is a lie, and you're still kind of like rubbing your eyes and stretching, and some dude bursts in the room and he's going, whatever it is, he's like, hey, trust me, the frogs are gay. QAnon's the way. Listen to Alex Jones. The New Age movement's the way to go. Put these crystals in your butt. A lot of people are gonna just kind of listen to that. And you're going to make a lot of mistakes that I think that that's going to create a very complicated time. And I think we're kind of in the beginning of those times. And I think that even the whole QAnon thing, I think it's integrally tied to Donald Trump. I don't think that it's as bullshit as a lot of people want to claim that it is. I know we have like, your Q-tards, and a lot of people dismiss those folks, but the way that intelligence operation got those people was by giving them a lot of truth to sell them some lies. And I think if some time goes forward and we start to see vindication to some of these Q guys, I think that's going to really bolster Donald Trump's star.
I would love if that happened, just because I never got involved in the Q thing other than kind of covering what they talked about, because it was new to me as of when we started the show. I'm like, I've never even heard of this. Apparently it's been around for a few years, but it's a classic muddying the waters. It's a COINTELPRO type of, maneuver to make things confusing for everybody. And as soon as you're confused about everything, then boom. So what you were talking about, though, as far as first getting red pilled or awakened or whatever cliche term you want to use,
becoming gay.
Yes. Yeah.
Getting gay.
Getting gay.
So I think that's a general story arc for a lot of people that are in this community, though, is they do that exact thing. They go down a rabbit hole of YouTube for a couple months and then go, oh my God, the frogs are gay, and I'm satanic elite, and they start yelling it on the internet, and that muddies the waters too, because then you've got all these fucking crazy people that, even though they might be right, they look crazy when you start doing that. So if you're looking crazy while you're live on YouTube, hey, shout out, talking about this stuff, then it further muddies the waters, and then you're a shill, and then it doesn't really matter. Like, if you could take in this information and then internalize it and repress it so that it one day explodes, that's the optimal path.
That's
I think
ideal.
For me.
Yeah.
Yes.
I agree with that. And
Brandon, what do you think?
What?
Oh, I said, Brandon, what do you think?
Oh,
you've been quiet, just taking it in this
well,
whole
I didn't
time.
hear it. Oh, this has been awesome, man. No, it's a phenomenal talk, and it's fascinating. Just when we really start to break down the psychology and then how it affects you. Dude, David, you nailed it with this, man. The Paul Revere phase of this is a challenging one. And it is because you're so passionate about people being harmed and you feeling like you have some insight into at least waking them up on how they're being fucked, right? You know they're being fucked in a certain way, but you just don't know how yet. And you do your best to speak about it as honestly and from the heart as you can. Yeah, which hole, how many dicks, all that. And that's an interesting part of this, but you nailed it with this, man. Getting to a point where, bro, you're now a representative for not only, that movement, but yourself at this point. And people are not going to want to fucking talk to you if you're running around wrong all the time, getting gay and wrong all the time. You just got to calm the fuck down. Be like, dude, let's talk about, the ideas, but I'm not going to add any energy into that system. I'm not going to feed the fear wolf anymore. So it's cool to hear, you have been into this for a while, and it's really cool to hear the conclusion that you've come to or where you are now. This may evolve, absolutely, but I think it's beautiful what you're doing, dude, and well spoken. Yeah.
Thank you. I think the other aspect to that too is like, when you hear something that's super damning, you're going to come across a lot of there's degrees to conspiracy theories. When we were having this big revelation right before COVID happened, with Epstein and the island, which just kind of went to bed, you had the John Podesta emails on Anthony Weiner's laptop, these really horrifying subjects in, having to do with children. You had the weird artwork that was all over Anthony Podesta's house, where everything was like this demonic child abuse sort of painting. That was what his entire mansion was covered in when it came to artwork. And they're talking about, whatever, cheese pizzas, hot dog parties, walnut sauce, all this code word. You start to wake up to that shit. And that's really what got the QAnon movement so galvanized to the movement, was and I don't even want to call it a ploy, but the emotional mechanism of what's happening to children. So when you wake up to that sort of thing, at the end of the day, I can't blame people for wanting to sound the alarm and for, grabbing their friends and telling them, QAnon is the way and the light, and this is the direction that we have to go. But I think that was sort of an Operation Truth thing, to throw it back. I think that this is the best lies that we fall victim to are the ones that give you 9 truths to sell you the 10th lie. And the 10th lie is the most important piece of the puzzle, because some of that information, within the hierarchy of information, is more impactful than the other things. And that 10th one is very impactful. And it's sort of the thing that steers the ship. I think for QAnon, it was all these things are true, but Donald Trump, the God King, is going to save you. And I think that is where things went really crazy. Also, they had a bunch of shit. JFK Jr. he's alive. He's going to come back from the dead. He's going to make an appearance. Hillary Clinton tried to kill him or tried to kill him, and he didn't die. And I think that, I don't know if that's necessarily disseminated by, the actual intelligence that was operating within Q, or if that's sort of the community that just takes things and runs with it. But I just want to say, I do dunk on those people a lot. But if you look into it, that thing is a lot of fun. I'll just say that.
Yeah, the RFK Jr. thing. Is it RFK? The one that died in the plane
JFK
crash?
Jr.
JFK Jr. Yeah, that one. We have the other one now, but yeah, the JFK Jr. one, that's one I never wrapped my head around. Like, why is that? Because he had great hair. Like, why is who's the Messiah that's coming? I don't understand that at all.
He had a tie-in. There was like a magazine he had called George, a sort of a news magazine publication that was strangely like coded. I'll admit that the covers, the wording, there was a lot of what seemed to be code.
Was there a 33?
I'm sure. Well, in every magazine, if you flip to the page, yeah, there was. But I just think that, there was some weirdness around it. And I think also, like, he's a cool looking character. The dude was handsome. He did have great hair, great jawline. He was the guy that you want. You certainly don't want a Donald Trump, admittedly, right? He's not a cool looking dude.
He's a
you would
chode.
think if there was going to be, he's literally a walking chode. You would think if there was going to be some sort of a cool, working behind the scenes with military intelligence, fighting the deep state and the cabal, that this guy would at least look cool. And I think JFK Jr., he kind of fit that bill.
He had a real American vibe. Yeah. You almost got into the accent there for a minute too. Like, you'd think you'd have like access to intelligence and cool
the best
things,
access,
like China.
I like China.
Yeah, I agree with that. I did want to get into a little bit here, so I'm flying through the chat here. When you were talking about how, selling 9 lies or 9 truths to sell the 10th lie, that seems like every government organization ever, especially if it's connected to the media and AARO or whatever the newest UFO fucking thing they say they're doing, when it's really just laundering money and making it look like they're doing something when they're fucking not. I think that's it. AARO. It could be. Fact check me, bro. But Chance,
could be a
again,
good way to launder kids and shit too. Just yeet them up in a UFO, right? In a TR-3B, and say, "Oh, we don't know what happened to your kid. It's not in somewhere being raped for adrenochrome. It got yeeted up in a UFO."
Stick stuff in their butt. Yeah,
they're just sticking stuff in their butt.
Put that dick in my ass.
Your alien dick. So anyway, Chance was saying, ask him about the aliens. So I'll just go off of that in general, like, as we get ready to close up here in 10, 15 minutes, whatever. What is your general opinion on aliens? Because there's so many ways to come at this, and I'm increasingly shunning the idea of the nuts and bolts alien thing where they're coming in physical craft with rivets and bolts from another planet 900 trillion miles away. That increasingly sounds fucking stupid to me. So, without giving away my opinion, what do you think about the whole alien thing and where it might be going?
Well, space is fake and gay, so we can pretty much cross that off the list as being a non-factor. I think that when it comes to the alien thing, it is multifaceted. There is some physical element for sure. There's certainly a back engineering of technology. I think we've even gotten to the point where you don't even necessarily need to have back engineered technology to come up with something that would, to your eyes, look like a UFO. I think that there are government operations that are going under the guise of being some unidentified, flying phenomenon. I think that's certainly the case. But I also think that there is an element, for those of you who are like, oh, well, that's gay. What about all this spooky shit? There's certainly an element of this that is real. My grandmother was a abductee victim. And since childhood, she would complain about experiencing sleep paralysis, seeing an inexplicably bright white light appear in her window, small gray entities around her side. But she was old when I was little. And so when she was little, it was a long time ago. This wasn't as popular. She never described it as sleep paralysis or anything like that. It wasn't until she read a book by Whitley Strieber, I believe it was called Communion, where he sort of cataloged a lot of people's abduction experiences. And when
the picture on the cover looked exactly like Lamb from Aleister Crowley in the early 1900s.
Yes. So there is some sort of element to this. There are those who get upset when people say that aliens are demons. But what I will say is whatever the fuck you call them, these things have been here for a very long time. They are integral to the human experience. I do personally believe they're biblical in nature. And the reason that I believe they're biblical in nature is because you can find thousands. In fact, we had a MUFON investigator on the show, Joel Johnson, or I forget.
Joel Osteen?
No, not Joel Osteen. No, I forget what his name is. I'm so sorry, but he was great. And he specifically zeroed in on the thousands of cases where people were able to stop these experiences by calling on the name of Jesus Christ. A lot of people will say, well, that's an egregore. You can stop them by calling on Buddha or, the Red Ranger. If you
doesn't
really
seem to
believe
work as
in it.
well.
Doesn't seem to work as well, and not nearly as many instances. I can't think of any, but there are thousands. And if you go to the Bible, it simply tells you that you have authority over these spirits with the name of Jesus Christ or through Jesus Christ. And so I do think that these things are biblical in nature. To call them demons is reductive. I do think they are I think that the grays, for example, the ones that people see most often, I suspect that they might actually be sort of a biomechanical element to them, that they are something that maybe
kind of in-betweenus.
Yeah, and I think that maybe like a spirit can inhabit it and use it to temporarily kind of interact with this realm in a very limited way, much the same way they would possess a human being. But this thing is much more limited than a human being. I think these entities want to possess humans because we have a range of experiences that they can partake in, a range of emotions and sexual gratification, all these different things. I don't think they like being in these things, but I think they use them. And I think that since the beginning, it seems that there has been, Gary Wayne would call it, the seed wars. It seems that there has been a genetic component that has been the central figure to sort of a tug of war. I mean, when I talk about the Nephilim being the offspring, Gary Wayne suggests that that's what the flood was for. The flood was to actually clear this genetic mishap off of the playing field and then get back to the original genetics of man, the way that God intended it. And I think that you can see that there is still an interest in mingling with the seed of man because ultimately, we're joking about getting stuff put in your butt, but there is the rise of the black-eyed children, right? So many people will talk about being abducted. Women will talk about being impregnated, losing the pregnancy, later on having an abduction experience again, and being exposed to children that she felt were her offspring, but were strange and not her actual children, but still felt this, paternal connection to them. I think that they're still trying to do it. They're still trying to mingle the seed. So there is a government aspect to this. And I think that I don't know how much of the government is actually keen to it. Everything is so compartmentalized. I think that there's probably some within different elements of these intelligence operations that know very well what they're dealing with. But I don't think that everybody is cued into it. I think that maybe some people suspect that, well, a deal is brokered. You're allowed to take X amount of people, and in return, we get technology.
The Eisenhower deal.
Exactly. And people scoff at that. They go, well, why wouldn't they just, if they have these capabilities, why wouldn't they just take it? And I think it's because within the spiritual realm, when dealing with these biblical entities, consent is needed. There are laws to this entire experience, and they supersede just the physical realm. Within the spiritual realm, there are laws that these things have to adhere to. And I think that when there is a deal brokered, they actually probably have to stick to it, because ultimately they're going to be judged. And I think that it's going to be like a court kind of a session. That's what I've gathered from it, at least. And so I think there is room for the spiritual element, but I do think that there is probably just, black ops kind of,
again, muddying the waters. And I like how you said that calling them demons is kind of reductive. I would totally agree. And I've been pretty clear on the show that when I say demons, I'm not necessarily saying biblical Satan's minions demons that have horns and they're trying to bite your dick off or whatever. Right. That's not what I mean. I've said a million times, it seems more to me like jinn or they're just we're retarded. Again, we don't know how to describe these things. They're just influences. If you want to get real reductive, they're influences on you that just drive you to do certain things, and apparently sometimes they appear in physical form, as far as you know. I mean, even dreams seem fucking physical sometimes. So who knows what's going on when people get abducted by these so-called aliens? Are they getting abducted with their body, or is it just their astral self? Are they getting yanked out of their body? Who fucking knows? Like, I don't know any more than the next person. I've never been abducted as far as I know. But Brandon, what would you say about that? Because I know we went rounds with Gary Wayne on, what a not so much an alien, but what these kind of maleficent entities are and what they could be. And I still stick to the same thing, that I think it's all one thing. Aliens, ghosts, paranormal activity, all these things are all the same fucking thing. Sasquatch, all of it. It's all the same thing, appearing to somebody how they think they should appear to them for whatever reason. So what's your thoughts on that?
Dude, nailed it. Carlos Castaneda would call that mud shadows. And it's sort of this, fog that permeates this entire realm. And this is what I feel just from an objective viewpoint, because I haven't experienced any of this either. It just looks like it fucks with you, these people, different individuals, in such a specific way. It's very tailored to them. It's to the person, right? But it's also on soul narrative. And I had a guy named Devin Winter on recently, and he talked about this realm, this place, whatever, being that pure source consciousness is attempting to filter into where we are, or where we find our consciousness at this density level. But the realm we find ourselves in basically has stained glass windows all over the top of it that are archons, or this sort of perturbance of all that is good that we would like, right? And that inherent inversion is what we experience, but it has to be on brand. It has to be on soul narrative for the individual. And this is where karma and all that other kind of stuff plays in, right? So the idea goes is that, yes, all of these things are very here, but they don't sort of play into your soul's, path if you're kind of on your soul's path. Like, if you don't need to be motivated in such a way that it's so dramatic that you have a near-death experience, and then you come back and you quit doing dumb shit, and you quit drinking all the time or whatever, and you just write a book, then that was a motivating factor. And now those demons or whatever don't have to fuck with you anymore. Mark Gober's book, An End to Upside Down Medicine, he quotes a preacher who's allegedly exorcised thousands of demons from people. And when he speaks of these demons, they say they don't like their job, that it's a shit job. They wish we were different, so they didn't have to motivate us in that way for us to change. Now, that also sounds like something a fucking demon would say. Another thing I just want to say to this is this book, Exo Vaticana, to something David was saying, is one of the best resources on this. This is a fascinating book. Putnam and Horn, I think Thomas Horn died. Yeah, Thomas Horn passed away. Chris Putnam's still kicking about. But it's a beast, but it's beautiful. It's all about this Vatican tie-in to the coming deception from the sky, and this ties into Blue Beam and all kinds of shit. But that it is pretty, air quotes, demonic, if you want to title sort of the biblical version of it, in nature. Now, there was something else I wanted to say, and then I had a question. Okay, with...
Wait, did I just hear you fart? Your brain farted.
I heard it. Did fucking fart. I had Crow on today. We had a fucking 3-hour chat. It was awesome. So okay. Okay. Jesus. Whenever people are calling that name, whenever they're getting abducted or whatever, that's not really his name, right? And so isn't there some controversy over that's not really the name of Jesus? So therefore, why wouldn't it be any more effective than the Red Ranger, let's say?
Or saying Buddha, like, have you ever seen somebody get abducted and be like, Buddha, save me? And
Buddha.
Buddha's like, nah,
Oh, I
man,
know what
I'm
I was
doing
gonna
my
say.
thing. Oh,
But
good.
Into that, and then I have another thing I was going to say, please, sir.
So it's hard to answer that one. I have had a personal experience, and I have been forced to do that, to call upon the name of Jesus in a time where I was not. I was already like a 30-year-old man who was not a Christian at all, lifelong conspiracy theorist, no religious upbringing whatsoever. And actually, to be honest, at the time had sort of a disdain for religion because my wife was an ex-Jehovah's Witness, and it's very much like a cult environment. And we went through some turmoil with her family because of her sort of fading away from the organization. So I was in a place where I was not thinking about Jesus Christ, but was still faced with, I don't know how much. I'll make this quick because I know you guys don't have a whole lot of time, and I'll try to tell this in an effective way. But
oh no, we're good, dude. Go.
We all want to hear this, brother.
Okay. This is a very weird story, and it shook me to my core, and it forever pivoted the direction that like 14 years at the time of conspiracy theory had taken me. So, I was living in New Jersey, and I decided to take on this huge venture of moving my family to Las Vegas. We packed everything we had, including our son and our cat, into a Hyundai Elantra, put our entire life on the roof of it, which forever dented it. And we drove 40 some odd hours to Las Vegas to try to cut it out there. We landed with my cousin, who put us up for a little while. I got a job, and we started to try to get the wheels turning. And one thing led to another, financial heartache after financial heartache. It started to feel like this was not going to be a reality for us. And ultimately, the good job that I had landed let me go because I just wasn't as good as they needed me to be. I admittedly like bit off more than I can chew, kind of oversold myself and yada, yada. So I'm already kind of experiencing this like desire to go back, but I don't want to call it quits because I'm sure you can imagine when you take on a venture like that, everybody tells you, you can't cut it. Don't do that. That's foolish. So I have my reservations. There's a sickness in the family. It's on her side of the family, and it's a good enough reason that we should go back because it's a terminal illness. And admittedly, I didn't want to admit it at the time. I was relieved because at least I didn't have to say this was because I was a failure. And we go back to New Jersey, very much like tail between my legs, and we land with the in-laws, a very uncomfortable situation for me. Now, I should have been more of a stoic character. I should have been grateful for these people giving us a spare room. I should have been present, but instead what I did was I kind of recoiled. I went inward. I became resentful. These people were Jehovah Witnesses. I didn't want to, I had my ideas about that. English wasn't their first language. I basically used every reason in the book to display shitty behavior. So what I ended up doing was I got myself a job. I would go to the job. I'd come back. I would literally sit this is a grown man, already has a child, already married. I would sit in this spare room on an air mattress, and I would play Red Dead Redemption 2, which is a great game. And my wife would be embarrassed because I wouldn't come and show face. And it would get to the point where she'd actually bring me up a dish for dinner. And I would never go down there. My son and my wife are playing with the in-laws. I'm upstairs playing video games. This becomes like a habit. Go to work, come back, eat dinner in the room, play Red Dead Redemption, go to sleep. I'm literally not showing face. I'm living life on repeat. I'm filled with all this sort of depression and feelings of, inadequacy and resentment. And I also know that I'm not doing what I need to be doing. I don't think you get to get away from shit like that. I think, your internal narrator, your conscious, whatever you want to call it, it eats you alive. And I think that you emit an energy that, things in the spiritual realm feed off of. And I think that I was feeding something. This goes on for a while until I have a horrifying 4-night experience. The first night, I'm laying in my bed. I had gone through the whole thing, played Red Dead, ate dinner, and I fall asleep, and I'm suddenly woken up to sharp knocks on the door. And I burst out of bed, and it's on the door, the front door to the house. I look out the window. No one's there. I realize nobody else seems to have noticed this. I'm waiting for like the in-laws to get up and check the door. Nobody's heard this. Nobody's there. Nobody's heard this. I go back to bed. As soon as I drift off, I hear the sharp knocks again. I look at the window. Nobody's there. Nobody's noticing. I look at my phone. It's fucking 3:00 in the morning. Of course it is. I'm already a career conspiracy theorist by this
Was
time.
it only 3 or 3:33?
Yeah.
I don't know. I couldn't say. I just know it was 3. Could have been 3:13. It could have been, but I know that it was 3 a.m. and some change. Probably not 3 on the dot. But I go back to sleep, and I'm already freaked out. I start to drift off, and it happens again. I don't even get out of bed this time because I'm now settling into the idea that it's in my mind and it's not. So something's knocking at I used to joke around. I was like, something was knocking at my soul door, which became a euphemism for butthole.
I was going to say better than backdoor. Hey,
it's right. No, it's the same thing, turns out. So I then just kind of stay up until the sun comes up because I'm freaked out now. Because every time I go to sleep, this happens, and I'm spooked. So I am not able to go to sleep till the sun comes up. Next day, live life on repeat. Red Dead Redemption. I go to work, Red Dead Redemption, dinner in the room, go back to sleep. Now, something pulls on my arm. And I kind of just chalked it up to like a spasm. So I get comfortable and I go back to sleep. Something pulls on my arm again. So now I put my arms in the blanket to try to, so at least I can't, if I am having a spasm, at least I can't do that because it's getting yanked up in the air, like very far from my body. So I put my arms, it's very disturbing, dude. It's a fucking huge bummer. So now I have my arms in my blanket. I go to sleep, and now I wake up to something pulling my leg off the bed, and I stay up once again until the sun comes up because I'm freaked the fuck out. Not a good look. Like a 30-year-old man, my wife is sleeping next to me, my son is sleeping on a twin size air mattress at the foot of the bed, and I'm just spooked out like a child. And by the way, I'm not saying anything to my wife. I'm not saying like I had a weird night last night, something was knocking on my soul door. I'm not saying, hey, something was pulling on my arms while I was trying to sleep. I'm shutting the fuck up about it because I am exhausted. This is 2 days now. I haven't gotten sleep, and I don't want to feed into this. I don't want to talk about it. I don't want her to be freaked out. If she gets freaked out, it's going to freak me out. I don't want to fucking do any of that. So I'm keeping it to myself. Third night, I live life on repeat, and I go to sleep, and I have a fucking nightmare. And the nightmare is that I'm in this void, and standing in the middle of this sort of dark void is this entity, and it is pretty muscular. I remember getting the impression of being like, oh, that's not good.
Boner.
I was rocked the fuck up. It was thick, and it had skin like a slug. There's like a leopard print slug. It's gray and it's black. It looked like that, but it wasn't slimy. No, not slimy. Oh, okay. It was just, that was the print it had all over its skin, was leopard print, gray and black. And it's got canines. Its lower canine teeth are actually protruding almost like short tusks over its upper lip. And I don't remember if it fucking had hair or anything, but I remember its eyes were like maraschino cherries. They were bright red eyes. And this thing is just like heaving. Its chest is rising and falling. Like this thing is fucking rage incarnate. And all around its legs is just swirling black mist. And that's the whole dream. It's just me looking at this thing. And I don't have any fucking awareness of my body or anything like that. I don't have any spatial awareness. I'm just at a distance looking at this thing, and it's just fucking raging out. So that's the whole dream. I wake up in the morning, and I'm not having a good time. And my wife goes to me and she goes, I had the worst nightmare last night. And I'm fucking not ready to hear it. And I'm also not telling her shit. I'm keeping it to myself because I'm actually terrified. And my wife goes, yeah, I was laying on my back next to you. It felt like I was awake. So she's about to describe sleep paralysis to me, but my wife doesn't know what sleep paralysis is at the time. So and she's never had it before that. So she goes, I try to turn to you and I can't move, but I can move my eyeballs. So I look to you and there is this monster on your chest choking you with bright red eyes and giant bottom fangs. And
oh, fuck.
Holy shit,
dude, you want to talk about like such a disappointing start to a day? I fucking like, I want to ask you, like, what do you do in that moment? Do you go like, well, babe, have I got a story for you? Or I just shut the fuck up.
I'd probably just go back to bed and explain it later.
Well, it was morning
Maybe
time.
not.
It was time to get up for the day. And
no, I mean, I'd still go back to bed, call into work, just try to reset the day.
yeah,
Like,
I mean, that's not a bad idea. I should have done that. I kept it to myself because I was so terrified to feed into this. There's like, you watch a horror movie and you're like, why aren't they talking? You know, like the one character sees like a ghost in a room and you're like, why the fuck didn't you tell the other characters what you saw? The one character will go like, what happened? And they'll go, it was nothing. And you're like, why? Why are you? And now I understand it's because you're so fucking terrified that you don't want to feed into this at all. I just wanted it to go away.
That's pretty common, actually. UFOs,
what, the shutting up?
Yeah, the not wanting to talk about it is huge in the UFO alien thing and paranormal stuff. That's
I always looked
trope.
at that and I questioned it. And I thought that was like, why? And I understand why. I've had experiences before. You know, like I said, my grandmother was like a fucking abductee victim and my mom had like weird stuff. I've always had weird stuff. This was the, you know, I don't know what the expression is. Took the cake, baked the cake, it did the thing.
I was gonna say that the kids now say, I think that takes the cake. That
takes the
lingo.
cake. Is that a real thing? Yeah. I felt so stupid when it came out. So I wake up, I get dressed, I go to work, I don't tell her. I come back, live life on repeat again, and I fucking trepidatiously go to sleep, you know. And when I do get to sleep, it's nice. Nothing happens. This is good. It's finally a good night. Until my wife wakes me up in the morning and she goes, hey, are you all right? And I go, what's going on? And she goes, look at this. And she shows me a video she took of me sleeping where, like, if you place your fingers to check your pulse on your neck, that part of my neck is just like boom, 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 boom. Like it's visibly throbbing. And she's like, it was clear. Whatever the hell you were dreaming about, it was fucking intense. I took a 5-second video and I woke you up. It was amazing. I had to show you. And so I'm looking at this. And it plays, and I like drag it back and I play it again. And I'm like, that's fucking crazy. And as we're looking at this, my son, who's on the fucking, I'm getting like chills right now talking about this. My son, who's on the twin size mattress, blow up mattress at the foot of the bed, starts fucking screaming. And he's sleeping. And he's screaming, but he's still sleeping. And we fucking scramble, and he sits up, and he's still screaming, but he's still fucking sleeping. And we get him and we console him and we wake him up and we snap him out of it and he's crying and he's fucking, you know, he's in hysterics. And when he finally comes to, we go, what's the matter? And this little son of a bitch goes, I had a nightmare about a monster with red eyes and sharp teeth. When he said that, dude, I about shit.
So did you buy stock in sage smudges? Like, how did you go about getting rid of this?
So I had no recourse, right? I don't necessarily buy into like the whole sage shit. I go like, I don't know. Sage is like, it's a lot of like white women doing like, I don't know, fucking Hobby Lobby spirituality. And I goes, I don't know if I want to do that, but I was really desperate. I'll tell you that. I was stupid desperate. I don't think I've ever been that desperate in my life, man. And so the next night before I went to bed for the first time in my life, I desperately prayed to Jesus Christ for the first time in my life. Like, I mean, with everything I had. And it fucking stopped. So, and that was like, it needed to stop. Do you understand? Like, I could not, it was one thing for it to happen to me. I could shut up and I could bottle it up if it's happening to me. If it starts happening to my wife, now there's like a protection issue. I'm the husband. Like, this is, I've got to try to control the situation, failing to do that. Then when it extends to my son, I'm like, I'm the protector of this fam. I don't know what the fuck to do, dude. And so when I tell you like the desperation that I came to that prayer with, it was like nothing I'd ever experienced in my life. And so when that happened, I'm not saying in that moment, and it wasn't in that moment that I became suddenly like this dude who was like, the Bible's the way and Jesus Christ is the way, the truth, and the life. It took me a long time to get there. But that was the moment where I was like, as a conspiracy theorist, it's always on the table, right? You have all these things. Aleister Crowley's over here, and fucking Albert Pike and Morals and Dogma is over here, and the Bible's like on the table, and you go like, well, that's gay. Christians are very gay, and they're just like, the
weird
church
homosexuals.
That's exactly. Every time I looked over, I was like, no, not for me. And it took a long time, and I never said that there wasn't validity in it. In fact, I would often find things that pointed in that direction, and I'd go, that's interesting, but not yet. And I did not yet for 14 fucking years. And when that happened, I was like, fine. And it sprung into this show. It sprung into Nephilim Death Squad. That the show that we do is basically the conspiratorial through the biblical lens. And it took me a long time to come there. And that is how I got there. And I mean, I'm just the type of person where the way I look at it is, if you're going to call on what many people are calling an egregore, which I do not feel that way, but if you're going to call on anybody that desperately and have them help you in a moment where you're that weak, I can never justifiably look at that in an unserious way again. You understand what I mean? Like, I can't ever besmirch that. That was, when I tell you, we're talking dreams and nightmares, guys. It felt like there was a fucking impending 18-wheeler that I knew was going to collide with my family in, fucking 5 hours. And I had no other recourse but to call on one really good dude that I knew who would stop the 18-wheeler, and then for me to then turn my back on it and go, probably an egregore is like, no, I don't have that. That's insulting for me to do. Other people, I don't get insulted when other people do it. But for me, it's almost like a how dare I,
Yeah, because it happened to you. That was your own, subjective thing that happened. And that's also not uncommon either, is when people have these experiences, whether it's what you had or abduction scenarios or whatever. It seems stupid when you hear this, and I'm not saying your story sounds stupid at all, but
it's very stupid.
Yeah, whenever somebody hears these stories, they can write them off real easy because they're like, whatever. It's when it happens to you that it really makes an impact on you. And that's really all that matters. Fuck everybody else. I mean, who cares? I don't know. Brandon, you said you've not really ran into this yourself, but I guarantee you if something like that did happen, you would remember it and probably be trying to tell everybody about it, right?
I would, and I find it interesting, man. And so I just want to ask if you are to the point to where if your belief system was really, really shattered in just a really interesting way, would you still consider it something that you were so attached to? So let me just say the way that I would sort of respond in this situation, and I don't know, honestly. Number one, I don't dream. I don't think, because I don't remember them or get a sense that I dream at all.
That's fine, dude. It just means you're an NPC. Don't worry about it.
I know, and that's fine. From an NPC's objective point of view over here, then I think what you guys are being fucked with is a motivator. I think this is not simply an egregore, because there's so many more. Think of the way that it inspired your life, right? Not only did that thing make you see this place in a completely new light, but also it motivated you to now amplify your voice, which was probably the whole purpose all along. Now, have you had any hate sitting on you since you have been following your soul's mission and really embodying your authenticity is what I would ask, rather than, did it take some outsourcing and a savior to come in? Because when I look at this whole thing from an objective point of view, because I just don't connect with it, I really don't, then whenever I look at that, I see it in the same way that we were talking about politics earlier, that it's two wings of the same bird, especially when we bring books like the Bible that have been not only tainted, but rewritten and written and pulled out and raped and all these things, but also looking at it just contextually as a story. If we take the emotion out of the belief system, then we can look at that story at some level and perhaps say that that's the Hegelian dialect, and you could see the two wings of the bird being played out right in front of you. You have this Old Testament God that was just, wow. And then you have the savior that comes in as the, man, I got to it's a reimagining. It's a image campaign. And so he comes in with this thing, and then now nothing's really changed as far as any of the story goes. It's just the image has been polished a little from an objective position. Now, with that as well, how people are motivated by it is what I'm interested in, because that is a true effect that you can see. It's not the wind, it's what the wind's doing to the trees, right? So the wind in your case was this horrible, traumatic event that really motivated your life in an incredible way. It turned on so many things in you, this protector mode. You walked down the list of the things that really were important to you, and it helped you boil that down. It's a distillation process for your soul, because you weren't, answering the knocking on your soul's door yet. And this, made you get up and literally answer that door. But it was to a whole new world in a way. So again, I see this objectively as just motivators. I think it's interesting. Fascinating story, though.
To that point, I would say that it didn't necessarily alter my worldview dramatically. As I kind of alluded to, being at that point, like 14 years into conspiracy theories, there was a lot of things that were constantly pointing in that direction. I just was never raised religious and had no relationship with Christianity or anything like that. I watched a lot of people walk around with like disdain for it, people that had bad experiences when they were kids, and it kind of drove them away from it. I never really had any of that. The closest that I had for it was just the Jehovah's Witness thing with my wife, but that wasn't so much with the sort of branch of Christianity aspect as much as it was with the cult aspect of like disassociation. If you should choose to no longer be associated with them, they actually kind of banish you and never speak to you, including your close family members. But it was never with the actual, contents or the contents of the Bible. But that event wasn't like the last one. And I'm not saying that this has any real sway over, I mean, in a way, it does constantly galvanize me to the position more and more. I get a lot of information often where it's like, even at the simplest level, if you look at like Zeitgeist, for example, and it's like the film where they reduce the story of Christ to an allegory of the stars. I don't think that is, I think that's just a mistake of the interpretation of it. I think that a lot of these things, even when people talk about like, oh, well, Jesus Christ lived 33 years and there's 33 vertebrae in the spine. There's an oil that you secrete from your spine called like Christos. And if you can move that to your brain, then you achieve enlightenment. Jesus Christ was an ascended master. You can be like Jesus Christ. I kind of suspect to a large degree that might be the very lie that was sold by the serpent in the garden, is this idea that you could be like God, which unfortunately I think is a lot of what the New Age movement tells people. And I think that when people are talking about ascended masters, I love David Icke, for example. There's a lot of people who I really enjoy. I don't agree with them on everything, but I really enjoy them. I really enjoy David Icke, but he admittedly talks to or has communed with ascended masters. He actually wrote about it in his own book, and they were the, ascended spirits of masters from Atlantis. And the only thing that I say to that is like, I do believe David Icke communed with something. I think that a lot of his information and a lot of the big revelations that came to him in the beginning were from a genuine experience. I just think that spirits can deceive. And I think that sometimes when we do run into something, I think people do have genuine experiences. I think they're so profound that we forget that there's room for lies. But that being said, it's put me on this path where I've always been a critical thinker. I'm not afraid to take in information like you have 33 vertebrae and there's an oil that you secrete called Christos, and that, the sun will set on the celestial crux and it will remain there for 3 days during the winter solstice until it starts to, rise again. And this is essentially the story of, and I'm not afraid to look at things that tell you about all the different deities that mirror the Immaculate Conception story the same way that Jesus Christ does. But every time I see one, to me, it actually suggests that this real person's story is echoed through the minutia of our reality, that he is both a real entity who did come, who did die for our sins, who was resurrected, but also it is such an integral figure to this experience that it is literally, everything is fractal. We're learning that through quantum physics and all these different things. And I think that the story of Jesus Christ is no exception. I think that he is and was a real person, and also is sort of echoed through the fabric of this experience. But I don't get down on people when they start to look at all of the various things. The ones that I rattled off, they're very compelling. And I think that there is something. And I think that a lot of Christians will look at things like that and they'll get shaken. And they'll go, well, no, that certainly can't be true. But a lot of these things are true. But does that mean that it's like, why not both?
Well, yeah, and a lot of these things, like you're talking about the astrotheology, we recently talked about that, and I think it's interesting, but I also think that there's more to the stars than just old, ancient people telling a story the same way 1,000 times in different words. There is something more to it. I don't know what that is yet. I'm not where you don't really know our show, but I grew up super Christian. Everybody and all the listeners know that, but. So I tend to look at things through a Christian perspective like that too, but I've seen all these other things and I don't really know what to make of it either. The best I can say is I don't know, and I'm kind of agnostic with what it means exactly. I'm going to keep trying to, connect dots with the stars, so to speak, and everything else we find out, and just try to piece together, I call it the information jigsaw puzzle, where you're just kind of finding a piece here and there, and that kind of fits there, but there's always seems to be a couple pieces that don't quite fit, and everybody's there. We're all at this point where we have a decent picture of what this puzzle is, but there's still a couple key pieces missing that, if they were to be filled in, might change the whole picture, and we don't really know what that is. Maybe you do when you die. I don't know.
Yeah, it depends on really quickly. I just want to say to that point, we talked about him before. I gave a shout out to Mika Dank. He disagrees with us in very many ways, but I genuinely love that guy. He's a great researcher. He's a great presenter of information. I find a lot of what he has to say very fascinating. So I just think that we get so caught up in our narratives. I'm galvanized to Jesus Christ in many ways, but also, who would I be if I couldn't look at information? Or no, not even who would I be? What would the story of Jesus Christ be if you couldn't look at other information for fear of that one falling apart? I think it's just a lack of understanding of it. The more you get to understand who he was and who he is and what this is all about, the more you look at those things, and I sort of find them affirming. I'm like, yeah, dude, that is real. And I think it just adds meat to this thing that I already believe to be true.
Yeah, and that's fine. And I mean, some people, play devil's advocate here, would call that confirmation bias, but you're going to find confirmation bias wherever you look. All you have to do is Google search it and you'll find your confirmation bias. So I don't buy that for a second. There's plenty of information out there and not enough hours in the day to research all of it. So everybody like us goes on a live YouTube and spouts what we think. That's what's going to happen. You take from this what you will. Go figure out your own shit. But we're going to wrap up here for the night. I have to wicked piss like you wouldn't believe. Piss. But thanks everybody in the chat. Before we get out of here, Brandon, where can we find your ass?
Bro, anywhere podcasts are served, right here in the YouTubes, as long as they'll have me, and expandingrealitypodcast.com. Thank you for having me again, dude. This was a blast. David, this is awesome, dude.
It's been a pleasure.
We got a lot to talk about. Yeah,
genuine pleasure.
Thanks again, Brandon, for stepping up as my co-host again. And before we get out of here, of course, Raven, tell everybody where they can find you and Rock Lobster. I'm just kidding. It's Top Lobster, but we'll
Top
meet him next time.
Lobster. You can find us on Nephilim Death Squad all over the place. YouTube, Rumble. Rumble is where we prefer because they don't censor us. So if you want to subscribe, go there. If you do it everywhere, that's cool too. And also, I do a show called Timeline Cleanse, airs exclusively on the Nephilim Death Squad channel on Rumble. It is a horrific, offensive, and very racist show. I'm sure you will find it disgusting. Also, I do want to mention that we are throwing a live event in Summerfield, Florida on October 25th through the 26th called Bohemian Grove. It is going to be a 2-day event. It's going to be Nephilim Death Squad, Tower Gang, a very offensive show, Thomas the Paranoid American, Juan Ayala of the One-on-One podcast, Cheney in Wonderland's going to be there, Clint Russell, Josie, the redheaded libertarian, Leonardo Joni, the very offensive and very racist stand-up comedian, as well as Revenge of the Cis, Donut, and a ton of other content creators. Guys, if you want access to those tickets, they're going on sale this Friday on patreon.com/Nephilim Death Squad. And our people are getting the first dibs. And after a week, they'll go on sale to the general public. But I got to warn you, it's only 350 seats and they're going to go quick. So if you want first dibs, patreon.com/Nephilim Death Squad.
Nice. Well, thanks you guys both for coming here. And hopefully next time we can get everyone together and do another one of these because this was fun. Again, thanks everybody in the live stream chat and audio listeners. If you want to join in, stop by our Instagram page and I will, announce when we're going live on YouTube. Generally, it's going to be on Thursdays at 6 Pacific time.